Officer almost snaps at tourists who won't listen. Many rules have changed. It was the kind of morning that made even the most serious visitors pause for a moment and take a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill their lungs. For Officer Daniels, this was just another day on duty, but he knew that today would not be like any other day. The park had recently updated its rules, and he could already sense the challenge of making sure everyone understood them. Many tourists didn't know that things had changed, and it was his job to ensure that they followed the rules for their safety and the safety of the park's wildlife. Officer Daniels had worked in the park for more than 10 years. He had seen everything from curious kids running too close to the edge of cliffs to careless visitors trying to feed the animals. Over the years, he had learned that being firm but friendly was the best way to handle visitors. However, with the new regulations in place, even some of the most well-meaning tourists might find themselves in trouble without realizing it. He pulled out his clipboard and checked the list of rules once more, making mental notes of the areas most likely to be problematic. The first group of visitors arrived shortly after he reached the entrance. They were a cheerful bunch, carrying cameras, backpacks, and snacks. Their excitement was obvious. They laughed and pointed at the scenic views as they walked in. Officer Daniels gave them a warm smile and a friendly wave, reminding himself to start with the usual polite approach. "Good morning. Welcome to the park," he called out. "Just a reminder, some rules have changed recently. Please stay on marked trails, don't feed the animals, and be careful near the cliffs." Most of the tourists nodded politely, but some seemed distracted by their phones or by taking photos. One young man walked ahead without looking at the map Officer Daniels had handed him. A little girl ran toward the edge of a viewing platform before her parents could stop her. Daniel's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly jogged over to guide her back to safety. "It's easy to get excited," he said gently, "but you have to stay behind the railing." "It's for your safety." She nodded, a little embarrassed, and clung to her mother's hand. As more visitors entered the park, Daniels noticed that not everyone was paying attention to the rules. Some ignored the signs indicating restricted areas, while others attempted to throw scraps of food to the squirrels and birds, thinking it would make for a cute photo. The officer knew that these small actions could cause big problems. Feeding animals could make them sick, and wandering into restricted areas could disturb delicate habitats. He sighed quietly, realizing that today might be one of the harder days. By mid-morning, the park was buzzing with activity. Families, couples, and solo travelers moved through the trails, each group filled with energy and curiosity. Officer Daniels walked along the main path, greeting visitors as he went and keeping an eye on potential trouble spots. He approached a group of college students who had set up a picnic near a protected flower bed. "Hello there," he said with a calm voice. "I'm afraid this area is off-limits to visitors now. The flowers here are very delicate and stepping on them can destroy years of growth." One of the students looked up, slightly annoyed. "Oh, we didn't know," he said. "We just wanted to take a few pictures." Daniels nodded, understanding that they didn't intend to cause harm. "I know," he replied, "but the signs are there for a reason. Please move to the picnic area over there. It's safe, and you'll still get great pictures without hurting the plants." The students gathered their things and moved, some of them muttering, but all obeying his instructions. As the sun climbed higher, Officer Daniels began to feel the pressure of keeping everyone safe while enforcing the new rules. He stopped near a small bridge where children often fed the ducks, a habit that was now prohibited. A mother was trying to hand bread to a group of ducks while her son laughed and ran along the railing. Daniels approached slowly, keeping his tone calm and approachable. "Excuse me," he said, "please don't feed the ducks. The bread can make them sick and the rules have changed recently." The mother looked surprised but quickly stopped and thanked him for the reminder. "I had no idea," she admitted. "We usually do this at other parks." Daniel smiled. It's a common habit, but here it's important to follow the new rules. Thank you for understanding." Despite these small successes, Daniels knew the day was far from over. Tourists were unpredictable, and some had a tendency to ignore warnings, thinking that rules were flexible when no one was watching. He continued walking through the trails, his eyes scanning for anyone straying into restricted zones or engaging in unsafe behavior. Every few minutes, he reminded visitors to stay on marked paths, to avoid climbing on rocks near waterfalls, and to respect wildlife. While some listened immediately, others needed repeated instructions, testing his patience more and more as the day went on. By noon, the park had grown crowded, and the sun was beating down strongly. Officer Daniels stopped for a moment under the shade of a large oak tree, taking a sip of water and glancing at the map. Certain areas were becoming hotspots for rule breaking, particularly spots with beautiful views or easy access to wildlife. He realized that he would need to spend extra time in these areas, gently correcting visitors while maintaining his calm demeanor. He reminded himself that yelling or losing his temper would only make the situation worse. Patience, combined with clear explanations, was always more effective. As he resumed his patrol, Daniels encountered a family trying to take photos on a cliffside that had recently been closed to visitors. He quickly approached them, raising his voice just enough to be heard over the wind and the chatter of other tourists. "Please step back from the edge," he said firmly. "This area is closed for safety reasons. One wrong step could be very dangerous." The parents looked shocked and immediately guided their children back to a safer spot. Daniels explained the reason for the closure, making sure they understood it was not just a suggestion, but a rule meant to prevent accidents. The family thanked him, and he moved on, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Relief that they had listened, anxiety for the rest of the day that still lay ahead. Throughout the morning, Daniels noticed a pattern. Most visitors wanted to enjoy the beauty of the park, but many underestimated the importance of the rules or simply didn't read the signs. He realized that part of his job was not only enforcing the rules, but also educating visitors about why the rules existed. He smiled to himself, remembering a visitor from years ago who had been upset about restrictions, only to return the next year and become one of the most careful and respectful tourists he had ever seen. He hoped that today, with gentle guidance, more visitors would leave with the same respect and understanding. By late morning, the park was alive with the sounds of laughter, camera shutters, and birds singing. Officer Daniels continued his patrol, reminding himself that each small interaction could prevent a bigger problem. While it was tiring, he also felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that he was protecting the park and its wildlife for future visitors. Each time a tourist followed the rules after his gentle reminders, he felt a small victory, a reassurance that patience and persistence mattered. As the morning drew to a close, Officer Daniels paused on a hill overlooking the main valley. The view was breathtaking, with sunlight glinting off the river and the trees swaying gently in the breeze. He took a deep breath, feeling a moment of calm before the afternoon rush began. Despite the challenges, he knew that mornings like this, filled with small victories and lessons for visitors, were what made his job meaningful. He adjusted his hat, picked up his walkie-talkie, and prepared to continue the day, knowing that the real test of patience and authority was still ahead. As the morning slowly turned into early afternoon, the park became busier. Families, friends, and solo travelers moved through the trails, each group excited to explore the beauty of the national park. The sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with the sounds of birds, rustling leaves, and the occasional laughter of children. Officer Daniels continued his patrol, walking steadily along the main trails. He was used to the rush of visitors, but with the new rules in place, every step required vigilance. Even one careless action could lead to accidents or disturb the delicate balance of nature that the park preserved. Daniels had barely taken a sip of water when he noticed a group of teenagers gathered near a small waterfall. They were laughing and joking, completely absorbed in their own world. A couple of them had started climbing on the rocks, posing for photos. Officer Daniels walked over, keeping his tone calm but firm. "Hey there," he called. "Please be careful. Climbing on these rocks is not allowed and it can be very dangerous." One of the teenagers looked up, surprised. "Oh, we're fine," he said. "We just want a good picture." Daniels shook his head slightly, taking a deep breath to remain patient. "I understand that," he replied. "But accidents can happen in a second. Please step down and stay on the marked path." Reluctantly, the group moved back, but some of them exchanged whispers and rolled their eyes. As he continued walking, Daniels realized that many visitors did not understand why the rules had changed. A couple was wandering into a newly restricted area near the river, carrying snacks for a picnic. Daniels approached quickly, waving his hand to get their attention. "Excuse me, this area is off-limits now," he said. "The riverbank is fragile, and stepping here can damage the plants and disturb animals that live along the water." The couple looked embarrassed. "We didn't see any signs," the woman said softly. Daniels pointed to a nearby sign partially hidden by bushes. "Some signs can be hard to spot, but it's important to follow the rules. The park updates regulations to protect both visitors and wildlife." The couple nodded and carefully returned to the main path. Despite these small victories, Daniels began to feel the strain of constant vigilance. The more he reminded visitors about the rules, the more he noticed some groups ignoring them completely. He reached a popular viewpoint where tourists often gathered to take panoramic photos. Today, a few groups had crossed into areas that were now restricted. Some had even set up tripods and cameras dangerously close to the edge. Daniels sighed and walked toward them, speaking loudly enough to be heard over their chatter. "Please step back from the edge," he warned. "This area is closed for safety reasons. You could fall and it's very dangerous." A young man laughed nervously. "We'll be fine," he said. "It's just a few steps." Daniels maintained his calm, but his tone carried authority. "It only takes one step to have a serious accident," he explained. "Please, for your safety, follow the rules." Slowly, the tourists backed away, some of them muttering but obeying nonetheless. As the afternoon sun rose higher, the park grew more crowded. Officer Daniels moved toward the main trail where he knew many visitors liked to feed the animals. Despite his repeated warnings in the morning, some tourists continued the habit, tossing bread to ducks and squirrels. Daniels approached a mother and her two children, gently explaining, "Please don't feed the animals. Human food can make them sick, and it can cause them to rely on visitors for food." The mother apologized quickly, gathering the children and guiding them away. Daniels felt a sense of relief, but also knew that other visitors might not be as receptive. Soon, Daniels noticed a large tour group moving along the trail. They were chatting, laughing, and snapping photos without paying attention to the signs. Some had wandered into a newly restricted area near a grove of old trees. The trees were ancient and fragile, home to birds and small mammals. Officer Daniels quickened his pace, knowing that he needed to intervene before anyone damaged the area. "Excuse me," he called as he approached. The group turned, slightly startled. "Please stay on the marked paths. This area is protected to preserve the trees and the wildlife that lives here." The tour guide looked apologetic. "We didn't realize," she said. Daniels nodded. "It's understandable, but it's important that everyone follows the rules. Thank you for cooperating." Despite Daniels' repeated reminders, he began to notice that some tourists treated the rules as suggestions rather than requirements. A few teenagers had climbed over a small fence to get closer to a stream for a photo. Daniels walked toward them, his patience tested. "Please step back," he said firmly. "Climbing over fences is not allowed. It's dangerous and it can harm the environment." One boy shrugged. "It's just a fence," he said. Daniels took a deep breath, resisting the urge to raise his voice. "It may seem small, but rules like this exist for a reason. One careless step can cause serious injury or damage the area. Please respect the rules." Slowly, the teenagers moved back, but some rolled their eyes and muttered under their breath. Daniels made a mental note that these visitors might require extra supervision. As he continued his patrol, Daniels saw more examples of careless behavior. A family had set up a small picnic in an area now reserved for wildlife, leaving wrappers and food scattered on the ground. Daniels approached them, explaining the importance of leaving no trace. "Please take all your trash with you," he said. "Leaving food or wrappers can attract animals and cause problems for both wildlife and visitors." The parents quickly cleaned up, apologizing for the oversight. Daniels smiled slightly, relieved that they understood, but he knew that others might not act as responsibly. By mid-afternoon, the park was bustling with visitors. Officer Daniels moved along a crowded trail, keeping a careful eye on everyone. He stopped frequently to remind tourists of the rules, sometimes using a gentle tone, sometimes firmer. He approached a group of friends who had wandered into a restricted area near a small waterfall. "Please come back to the marked trail," he said. "It's unsafe to be here, and the rules have changed recently." One slip could lead to a serious injury. The friends laughed nervously, realizing that Daniels meant business. They returned to the trail, muttering apologies. Daniels could feel the tension building inside him. He was used to being patient, but the constant reminders, the repeated warnings, and the disregard for rules by some visitors were starting to test his limits. He reminded himself to stay calm, to maintain his professionalism, and to focus on the purpose of his job, protecting the park and its visitors. Every time someone listened and followed the rules, it was a small victory, but the sheer number of people made it challenging to ensure that everyone remained safe. A little later, Daniels approached a group of tourists taking photos near a cliff. He had already warned them once earlier in the day, but they had returned, ignoring the signs. He took a deep breath, speaking more firmly this time. "I've asked you to stay back from the edge," he said. "This is not just a suggestion. It is dangerous and you must follow the rules. Please step back now." The tourists looked startled, realizing that Daniels was serious. They moved away immediately, some apologizing while others looked embarrassed. Daniels nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. As the afternoon wore on, Daniels noticed that some visitors simply did not understand the purpose behind the rules. A young couple had started feeding a small group of birds, smiling as the birds pecked at their hands. Daniels walked over, trying to remain calm and educational. "Please don't feed the birds," he said. "Human food can harm them, and it encourages them to rely on visitors for meals. It's important to respect wildlife and follow the rules." The couple apologized and put the food away, listening carefully as Daniels explained why the rules were in place. Despite these successes, Daniels felt a growing tension. He knew that the rest of the afternoon could bring more challenges, especially as the park became even more crowded. Visitors who ignored rules, whether out of curiosity, excitement, or carelessness, were testing his patience. He reminded himself that staying calm, clear, and professional was the key to managing the situation effectively. Yet he couldn't deny the stress that was building inside him. By late afternoon, Officer Daniels reached a popular viewpoint where tourists gathered to watch the sunset. He noticed several visitors standing dangerously close to the edge, some leaning over to take photos. Daniels walked toward them, speaking firmly. "Please step back from the edge," he said. "This area is restricted and it's unsafe. One wrong step could be very dangerous." The tourists stepped back, some muttering but all obeying. Daniels took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and lingering tension. He knew that these moments, though small, were crucial to maintaining safety and order in the park. The day was far from over, and Daniels knew that the evening would bring its own set of challenges. Yet he also felt a sense of pride. Despite the constant reminders, the difficult visitors, and the potential for accidents, he had managed to keep most people safe and informed. He reminded himself that patience, persistence, and clear communication were the tools that made his job effective. As the sun began its slow descent, casting a golden glow over the park, Daniels prepared himself for the next phase of the day, knowing that the most challenging moments might still be ahead. By late afternoon, the park was at its busiest. Families and groups of friends crowded the trails, each eager to enjoy the breathtaking views, the waterfalls, and the wildlife. Officer Daniels had been patrolling since the early morning, and the constant reminders, warnings, and corrections had begun to weigh on him. He loved his job and he loved the park, but the challenges of keeping so many visitors safe while enforcing new rules had started to test even his remarkable patience. Today, it felt different. The disregard for the rules, the casual attitude of some visitors, and the sheer volume of people made the day more stressful than usual. Daniels walked along the trail leading to a popular cliffside viewpoint. He had already warned several groups about staying behind the safety railing, but now he noticed a large group of tourists approaching the edge. Some of them were leaning over to take selfies, others were laughing and pointing out the views, and a few were even stepping onto rocks that were clearly marked as unsafe. Daniels quickened his pace, his heart beginning to beat a little faster. He reminded himself to stay calm, to speak clearly, and to enforce the rules firmly but professionally. "Excuse me," he called as he approached the group. "Please step back from the edge. This area is restricted for your safety." A few people turned, smiling politely, while others continued taking photos as if they hadn't heard him. Daniels raised his voice just enough to be heard over the chatter. "I need everyone to move back immediately. It's very dangerous to be this close to the edge." A young man laughed nervously and stepped back slightly but stayed leaning on a rock, trying to get one more picture. Daniels felt a tight knot of frustration in his chest. He knew this was the moment that required him to remain calm yet firm. The group's tour guide stepped forward looking apologetic. "We didn't realize it was that dangerous," she said. "We'll step back." Daniels nodded, giving a slight smile. "Thank you," he said. "I know it can be tempting to get closer for photos, but the rules are here for a reason. One slip could lead to a serious accident. Please make sure everyone stays back from the edge." Most of the tourists obeyed, but a few still lingered near the rocks, trying to get better angles for their photos. Daniels took a deep breath and reminded himself that patience and clarity were the key. As he continued his patrol along the cliff, Daniels noticed more tourists ignoring the newly posted signs. One family had wandered into a restricted area near a grove of old trees, where the ground was fragile and the plants delicate. Daniels approached them quickly. "Please step back," he said firmly. "This area is off limits to protect the plants and wildlife. Walking here can cause damage that takes years to recover." The father looked at him and chuckled nervously. "We're just walking for a minute," he said. Daniels shook his head slightly, trying to keep his voice calm. "Even a few steps can cause damage," he explained. "Please follow the rules. It's important for the safety of the park and its visitors." The family moved back, some muttering but all complying. Despite these small victories, Daniels felt his patience thinning. Every few minutes, he encountered visitors ignoring the rules, and it seemed as though no one was paying attention to the warnings from the morning. A group of teenagers had climbed over a small fence near the waterfall, laughing and taking photos. Daniels approached quickly, his voice firmer than usual. "Please get down from there immediately," he said. "This is dangerous, and you could hurt yourself or damage the environment. Follow the rules. The teenagers froze, realizing that Daniels meant business this time. Slowly, they climbed down, but some of them whispered sarcastically to each other. Daniels reminded himself not to take it personally, even though the constant disregard for the rules made the day feel heavier. A little further down the trail, Daniels spotted a family tossing bread to the ducks near the pond. He had already reminded them multiple times in the morning, but they seemed to have forgotten or chosen to ignore the rules. His patience wavered slightly as he walked toward them. "Please don't feed the ducks," he said firmly. Human food can make them sick, and it encourages them to rely on visitors for meals. This is a rule, not a suggestion. I need everyone to respect it. The mother looked embarrassed, quickly gathering the food and apologizing. Daniels nodded, satisfied that they understood, but he couldn't ignore the growing tension building inside him. By mid-afternoon, the park was swarming with visitors. The popular viewpoints, picnic areas, and trails were crowded, making it harder for Daniels to monitor every group. He noticed a group of tourists attempting to climb over a barrier near a steep drop, clearly ignoring the warning signs. Daniels approached, feeling the strain of the day pressing on him. "Step back, please," he called out. "This area is restricted. You could fall and get seriously injured." The tourists looked startled, but some seemed annoyed, thinking he was overreacting. Daniels clenched his fists briefly, reminding himself to stay calm. His voice carried authority, and finally they obeyed, stepping back to a safer area. The next challenge came in the form of a large tour group moving along a narrow trail near the river. Some members of the group were walking into protected areas to take selfies, while others were tossing small snacks to the birds. Daniels felt a surge of frustration. He walked quickly toward them, speaking loudly enough to be heard over the chatter. "Please everyone stay on the marked path," he called. "Feeding wildlife and entering restricted areas is not allowed. These rules are for your safety and for the animals. Follow them now." The tour guide hurriedly gathered the group, apologizing to Daniels. Most of the visitors followed instructions, but a few lingered, whispering and laughing as if they thought the rules were unnecessary. Daniels paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. His heart was pounding, and he felt the stress of the day weighing heavily on him. He loved his job and the park, but the constant testing of his patience was exhausting. He reminded himself that losing his temper would not help. It would only escalate the situation. Yet, he couldn't ignore the fact that some visitors were deliberately ignoring the rules. The tension inside him grew, a mix of responsibility, frustration, and concern for the safety of everyone in the park. Further along the trail, Daniels came across a group of friends who were attempting to cross a small stream, ignoring signs warning of slippery rocks and strong currents. He hurried over, his voice firm but controlled. "Please don't cross there," he said. "The rocks are slippery and the current is strong. You could fall and get seriously hurt. Follow the rules and stay on the designated path." The friends hesitated, clearly realizing the danger. One of them nodded and helped the others back onto safe ground. Daniels felt a wave of relief, but the tension inside him remained. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, Daniels knew that the most challenging part of the day was yet to come. The busiest time for visitors was approaching, and he could feel the strain of maintaining order and safety intensifying. Every step along the trail required constant attention, every group of visitors demanded reminders, and every ignored warning tested his patience further. He reminded himself to stay professional, to communicate clearly, and to focus on the importance of his role, protecting visitors and preserving the park for everyone. Just as Daniels thought he might get a brief moment of calm, he noticed a large group of tourists at a scenic overlook. Several of them had ignored multiple rules. Some were leaning dangerously over the edge, others were tossing food to birds, and a few had climbed over barriers to get a better view. The officer's heart pounded. He walked quickly toward the group, knowing that this would require all of his patience and authority. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice carrying across the overlook. "Everyone, please step back from the edge and stay on the marked paths. Feeding wildlife and climbing over barriers is not allowed. This is dangerous and it could lead to serious accidents." The tourists looked startled, some stepping back immediately while others hesitated. Daniel's voice grew firmer, but he kept it controlled, determined not to lose his professionalism. "I've asked politely, but now I need full compliance. Please follow the rules for your safety and for the safety of the wildlife." Slowly, the tourists obeyed, moving back to safer ground, some muttering, others apologizing. As he stood there, watching the group finally comply, Daniels felt a rush of mixed emotions. Relief that they had followed the rules, frustration that it had taken repeated warnings, and exhaustion from the constant vigilance required to manage so many visitors. The tension inside him was high, but he reminded himself that this was the nature of his job. Difficult, sometimes stressful, but ultimately rewarding. Each visitor who followed the rules was a small victory, and each prevented accident was a reminder of why his work mattered. By late afternoon, Officer Daniels continued his patrol with renewed focus. He knew the day was far from over, but the challenges he had faced had strengthened his resolve. He reminded himself that patience, authority, and clear communication were his most important tools. Even as his frustration simmered just beneath the surface, he stayed calm, guiding tourists safely through the park, educating them about the rules and protecting the fragile beauty of the natural environment. As the afternoon slowly turned into early evening, the park was alive with activity. Families, couples, and groups of friends filled the trails, each one eager to enjoy the remaining daylight. Officer Daniels continued his patrol, carefully observing every visitor and every activity. His earlier frustrations had not disappeared, but he reminded himself that patience and persistence were the keys to keeping everyone safe. Despite the challenges of the day, he took pride in his role, knowing that he was helping visitors enjoy the park while protecting its wildlife and natural beauty. Daniels moved toward the scenic overlook where he had dealt with the large group earlier. Many visitors were still there, taking photos, laughing, and enjoying the view. He noticed a small group approaching the edge of the cliff, clearly ignoring the safety railing. His heart tightened as he walked toward them. "Please step back from the edge," he said firmly, though his voice was calm. "This area is restricted. It's dangerous, and one wrong step could lead to a serious accident." The group froze, realizing the seriousness of his tone. One of the tourists, a young woman holding a camera, stepped back quickly, apologizing. "We didn't know it was that dangerous," she said softly. Daniels nodded, appreciating her honesty. "I know it can be tempting to get closer for photos," he explained. "But the rules are here for your safety and for the protection of the environment. Please make sure everyone stays back." Most of the group obeyed immediately, moving to safer ground. A few lingered, but Daniels approached them, calmly explaining the importance of following the rules. Slowly, they too stepped back, and the tension that had been building inside him began to ease slightly. Nearby, a family was trying to feed a small group of birds. Daniels walked over, speaking clearly but firmly. "Please don't feed the birds," he said. "Human food can harm them, and it encourages them to rely on visitors for meals. The rules are here for your safety and the animals' well-being." The parents apologized immediately, gathering the food and guiding their children away from the birds. Daniels smiled slightly, feeling a sense of relief. These small victories reminded him why patience was so important. As he continued along the trail, Daniels noticed a group of teenagers attempting to climb a low fence near a stream. He approached them quickly. "Please step back," he said firmly. "Climbing over barriers is not allowed. It's dangerous and you could hurt yourself. Follow the rules." The teenagers hesitated, clearly realizing that he was serious. One of them muttered under his breath, but all of them climbed back onto the safe path. Daniels took a deep breath, feeling the tension inside him begin to subside. The moment of authority and calm had worked, and the teenagers understood the importance of following the rules. By now, Daniels realized that the key to managing the visitors was not only enforcing rules, but also explaining why the rules existed. He approached a group of college students who were sitting near a newly restricted area with fragile plants. "Please move to the marked path," he said. "These plants are delicate and need to be protected. Walking here can damage them permanently." One of the students looked up, curious. "Why are the plants so important?" he asked. Daniel smiled, appreciating the question. "These plants are part of the park's ecosystem," he explained. "They provide food and shelter for animals, help keep the soil healthy, and make the park beautiful for everyone. Protecting them keeps the park alive and safe." The students nodded, impressed by the explanation, and moved to the marked path without complaint. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the park's trails grew quieter, but some of the more adventurous tourists continued exploring. Daniels noticed a couple trying to cross a small stream, ignoring the warning signs about slippery rocks and strong currents. He walked over quickly, his voice calm but firm. "Please don't cross there," he said. "The rocks are slippery and the current is strong. You could fall and get hurt. Follow the rules and stay on the designated path." The couple looked embarrassed, realizing their mistake. They returned to the safe area, thanking Daniels for the warning. Throughout the late afternoon, Daniels continued to patrol the park, balancing authority with education. Every time he reminded visitors of the rules, he also took the time to explain why the rules mattered. Most people responded positively, appreciating the guidance and understanding that he was there to keep them safe. Slowly, the tension of the day began to lift as more and more visitors complied with the rules. Daniels felt a sense of accomplishment. Each visitor who listened, each group that followed the guidelines, was a small victory that made the long day worthwhile. At one point, Daniels stopped near a popular picnic area. A group of families had gathered there, enjoying their meals, but some had left wrappers and crumbs on the ground. He walked over, smiling warmly. "Please make sure to take your trash with you," he said. Leaving food or wrappers can attract animals and cause problems for both wildlife and visitors. The parents quickly cleaned up, apologizing for the oversight. Daniels nodded, feeling satisfied that they understood. Small actions like this helped keep the park safe and clean, and he felt proud of his role in educating visitors. A little later, Daniels approached a group of tourists taking photos near the waterfall. Some had ventured close to restricted areas to get better angles. He spoke calmly but firmly. "Please step back from the restricted areas," he said. "It's dangerous and you could slip and fall. Follow the rules for your safety." The tourists stepped back, realizing the seriousness of his tone. Daniels explained the reasons behind the restrictions, emphasizing both safety and environmental protection. The group listened attentively, some nodding as they adjusted their positions to safer areas. As the evening wore on, the park grew quieter. Many visitors had left, while others lingered to enjoy the last moments of sunlight. Daniels walked along the trails, taking in the beauty of the park and reflecting on the day. Despite the challenges, he felt a sense of fulfillment. He had successfully guided visitors, enforced rules, and protected both people and wildlife. Each interaction had been an opportunity to educate, and most visitors had responded positively. His patience, persistence, and professionalism had paid off. Near the main viewpoint, Daniels noticed one last group of visitors preparing to leave. They had followed the rules throughout the day, staying on paths, avoiding restricted areas, and respecting wildlife. He approached them with a smile. "Thank you for following the rules and helping to protect the park," he said. Your actions make a big difference for everyone who comes here." The visitors smiled back, appreciating his guidance and understanding the importance of his role. Finally, as the sun set behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the trees and trails, Daniels took a moment to pause and breathe. The park was calm, the visitors were safe, and the wildlife was undisturbed. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that his patience and careful guidance had made a difference. The day had been long and challenging, but it had also been rewarding. He knew that tomorrow would bring new visitors, new challenges, and new opportunities to educate and protect. Daniels adjusted his hat, picked up his walkie-talkie, and began walking toward the park exit. He reflected on the lessons of the day. Patience, firmness, and clear communication were essential, and understanding the reasons behind rules helped visitors respect them. Most importantly, he reminded himself that his work was not just about enforcing rules, but about fostering a culture of respect, safety, and care for the park and its wildlife. As he walked along the trail one last time, Daniels felt a renewed sense of purpose. The park was quiet now, with only the sounds of nature filling the air. The challenges of the day had tested him, but he had succeeded in maintaining order, educating visitors, and protecting the beauty of the park. He knew that each day brought new lessons, but also new victories, and he felt grateful for the opportunity to serve and guide the visitors who came to enjoy the natural wonders of this special place. As the evening grew darker and the last golden rays of sunlight faded behind the hills, the park began to empty. The crowds of visitors who had filled the trails, picnic areas, and viewpoints throughout the day were slowly leaving, many tired but happy after a day spent in nature. Officer Daniels walked along the quiet paths, his footsteps soft on the dirt trails. The once busy park now felt calm, peaceful, and almost magical under the gentle glow of the fading light. He paused for a moment, taking in the sounds of birds settling in for the night, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, and the distant trickle of a stream. Despite the challenges of the day, there was a sense of serenity that only came when the park was quiet and safe. Daniels reflected on the day, replaying the events in his mind. From the early morning visitors who had ignored the signs and rules to the large groups at the cliffside and waterfall, it had been a day full of challenges. He remembered the moments when his patience had been tested, the times when he had to raise his voice slightly to get attention, and the moments of relief when tourists finally listened. He realized that each interaction had been a learning experience, not just for the visitors, but for him as well. Each reminder, each explanation, and each enforced rule had been a small step toward educating people about the importance of respecting nature and staying safe. As he walked along the main trail, Daniels noticed the small details that reminded him why he loved this job. A young boy carefully placed a flower back on the ground after it had been accidentally trampled. A couple carefully followed the marked path, holding hands and smiling at the scenery without disturbing it. Even the birds and small animals had gone about their day undisturbed, thanks in part to his guidance. These small acts of respect and awareness filled Daniels with a sense of pride. He realized that, despite the frustrations and challenges, the work he did made a tangible difference. Daniels stopped near the scenic overlook one last time. The view was breathtaking, with the river glistening under the twilight sky and the trees casting long shadows over the valley. He reflected on the tourists he had encountered throughout the day. Some had ignored the rules at first, but most had eventually listened and understood why the rules existed. He thought about the teenagers who had climbed over fences, the families who had tried to feed the animals, and the large groups at the cliffside. Each encounter had required patience, explanation, and sometimes firmness, but in the end, most visitors had followed the rules. This realization brought a deep sense of satisfaction, and a reminder that his efforts had not been in vain. Walking along the quieter trails, Daniels thought about the lessons the day had taught him. One of the most important lessons was that people often need guidance and understanding, not just enforcement. Many visitors had broken rules simply because they did not understand the reasons behind them. When he explained the purpose of the rules, protecting wildlife, preserving fragile ecosystems, and keeping visitors safe, they had listened. Patience and clear communication had been more effective than anger or frustration. Daniels realized that his role was not only to enforce rules, but also to educate and inspire respect for the natural world. He also reflected on his own patience. There had been moments when he felt the tension rising, moments when he could almost feel himself snapping at visitors who ignored repeated warnings. Yet, he had managed to stay calm, firm, and professional. Looking back, he realized that those moments of near frustration had taught him more about self-control, responsibility, and leadership. Each challenge had strengthened his ability to handle difficult situations while maintaining a positive influence over the visitors. Daniels thought about the tourists who had changed their behavior after a gentle reminder or a clear explanation. The couple who had returned from the restricted riverbank area, the young woman who had stepped back from the cliff edge, the teenagers who had climbed down from the rocks, each had learned something valuable about safety and respect. He realized that these small moments of compliance and understanding were the true victories of his day. They were reminders that patience, education, and a calm approach could change behavior for the better. As he continued toward the park exit, Daniels reflected on the broader lessons for the park itself. Rules and regulations were essential, but they were only effective when visitors understood and respected them. Enforcement alone was not enough. Education and guidance were equally important. He thought about the signs, the maps, and the information boards, realizing that they were tools that helped visitors make safer choices. Yet it was his personal interaction with visitors, his explanations, and his reminders that made the rules meaningful. Without that human connection, rules might be ignored, forgotten, or misunderstood. Reaching a quiet spot near the entrance, Daniels paused to take one last look back at the park. The trails were empty now, the picnic areas clear, and the wildlife settling in for the night. He felt a sense of accomplishment and pride, knowing that he had guided visitors safely through a day filled with excitement, curiosity, and sometimes carelessness. The park had been protected, visitors had been educated, and the natural environment had remained undisturbed. These were the results that made the long hours, repeated warnings, and moments of near frustration worthwhile. Daniels thought about the future, imagining the next day filled with new visitors, new challenges, and new opportunities to educate and protect. He knew that every day in the park would bring different experiences, some easy, some difficult, but all valuable. He reflected on the importance of his role, not just as an enforcer of rules, but as a guide, mentor, and protector of both visitors and nature. Each day was an opportunity to make a difference, to foster understanding, and to inspire respect for the natural world. He also thought about the personal growth he had experienced over the course of the day. Handling large groups of visitors, managing near accidents, and maintaining patience in the face of repeated rule breaking had tested him in ways he hadn't expected. Yet he realized that these challenges had strengthened his ability to remain calm under pressure, to communicate clearly, and to lead by example. The day had been a lesson not only for the visitors but also for him. He felt gratitude for the experience, knowing that it had made him a better officer, a better guide, and a better protector of the park. As darkness began to settle over the park, Daniels walked the last stretch toward the exit. The sky was painted with shades of deep blue and purple, the stars beginning to twinkle above. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the park was safe for the night, and that the visitors had left with a greater understanding of the importance of rules and respect for nature. He thought about the lessons he would carry forward, the value of patience, the importance of education, and the rewards of guiding people towards safer and more responsible behavior. Finally, reaching the entrance, Daniels took a moment to reflect on the day as a whole. The challenges, the frustrations, the moments of near anger, and the victories of compliance and understanding all blended into a sense of accomplishment. He had managed to maintain order, protect the environment, and educate visitors, all while keeping his composure and professionalism intact. These were the moments that defined his work, the moments that reminded him why he loved being an officer in the park. Daniels took one last deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill his lungs. He thought about the wildlife settling in for the night, the quiet trails, and the visitors who had learned to respect the park's rules. Each day was different. Each visitor brought new challenges, but the core of his job remained the same: to protect, to guide, and to educate. He felt pride in his role, gratitude for the lessons of the day, and a renewed sense of purpose for the days to come. As he walked to his patrol car, ready to head home, Daniels looked back at the park one last time. The trees swayed gently in the evening breeze, the river sparkled under the moonlight, and the trails lay quiet and safe. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he felt prepared, confident, and inspired by the lessons of today. He had faced a day full of tests, almost lost his patience several times, but had come through successfully, guiding visitors and protecting the park. It was a day of learning, reflection, and quiet victories, one that he would remember for a long time.